Today's relationship tip is about establishing healthy boundaries. As a couple, we need to have healthy boundaries between each other, and we also need appropriate boundaries with others. And we need to show up as a team with a third party when we say no and establish those boundaries. Boundaries are not meant to control other people. Boundaries are meant to help meet our needs and to respect each other. Boundaries always have two parts, and that's important. Part number one is to set the boundary or to reset it if you've previously set a boundary. And part number two is to extend an invitation to the other person to interact with you within your boundaries. I will give you two examples. One example between a couple and the second example with a third party. So when Lydia is upset, she gets loud and angry. And she often ends up calling her husband Peter and yelling. In her mind, she's just venting her frustration, but Peter feels extremely uncomfortable with a raised voice. So first of all, he might want to remind her how her yelling or raised voice impacts him. If that doesn't help, he might have to set a boundary and let her know that right now he's not comfortable talking anymore. And he could suggest, why don't we talk when you feel less angry? Because I would really like to understand what you're feeling underneath your anger and how I can support you. Example number two. Cynthia and Bill love to babysit their grandchildren, but they're a little bit bothered because their son and daughter-in-law tend to let them know last minute that they're needed as babysitters. So setting boundaries together as a team in their case means, first of all, to let their children know that they can only babysit with some advance notice. They could, for example, say, we can only babysit if we know a week in advance or 3 days in advance, whatever works for them. And then if their children again asked them to babysit last minute, because people are used to us not having boundaries, then they might need to reset that boundary and say, sorry, we can't. And part two, extend an invitation to interact within their boundaries and say, for example, but we're very happy to babysit next weekend if you need us.